Okay, welcome to automatic stabilisers. Pretty important concept. Let's quickly look at a definition. These are fiscal policy instruments which act in a counter-cyclical way to dampen the cycle of boom and bust. In other words, to soften the process of boom and bust in the economic cycle. There's two automatic stabilisers. We have welfare benefits, such as unemployment benefits, benefits to the low paid, maybe tax credits or universal credit. Now we also have income taxes, and the more progressive the income tax, the stronger the automatic stabilisation effect. So let's have a look at how this occurs. If you've got our economic cycle here, so we've got real GDP, you've got time on the bottom, and so we've got our boom and we've got our recession and slump here. Then when you have a boom, what's going to happen is there's going to be economic growth, and people's incomes are going to tend to go up, and therefore they'll tend to pay more tax revenue. As your income goes up, you'll pay more revenue to the government, and so tax revenue will increase. And of course you might go into higher tax brackets, and so you pay overall a higher proportion of tax to the government on the whole of your income. So tax revenue will increase. Meanwhile, in a boom there's likely to be a fall in unemployment, okay, and people on low incomes might have an increase in incomes, so therefore there'll be less, or rather fewer, benefits that are paid out. So there'll be a fall in benefits that are paid, and therefore there'll be a fall in government expenditure, other things being equal. And of course this has a contractionary effect on aggregate demand, okay? So the increase in tax revenue reduces disposable income, reducing aggregate demand. The fall in benefits that are being paid out reduces an injection into the circular flow, so it reduces aggregate demand. And therefore we have an increase in tax revenue and a fall in government expenditure, so it could be that we end up with a budget surplus. And that will happen naturally, automatically, in this part of the economic cycle. And so the key thing, it has a contractionary effect on the economic cycle, so it reduces the boom. There's not quite such a big boom with the problems that might occur in the boom, such as inflation perhaps. And then the opposite happens, of course, when we're heading towards a recession. In a recession, then basically people's incomes will tend to fall, and they might fall down a tax bracket, so they pay a low proportion of their income in taxation, and therefore the tax revenue will tend to fall. Similarly, there'll be an increase in unemployment, so the government will pay out more in welfare benefits such as unemployment benefit, and that's an injection into the circular flow that increases, and therefore this has an expansionary effect on economic growth. So what will happen is it will prevent a recession from being so harmful, so severe to some extent. And this again occurs automatically. So because it's automatic and the government taken no action in this, it's left tax rates the same, it's left benefits the same, it's called non-discretionary fiscal policy. And so when you have this recession, you have a budget deficit will automatically occur, and therefore this is because G will be greater than T. Okay, so over the cycle, if the budget surplus equals the budget deficit, when we have a deficit, we tend to call it a cyclical deficit. So a cyclical deficit is if the fiscal deficit is cancelled out by the surplus in the boom years, as you can see here, if the two are equal. And so a cyclical deficit isn't really a major problem. And automatically the government finances will move into a deficit, as I said before, when you have a recession. However, if you have a structural deficit, and say not only in the recession but also in a boom, if we have a deficit all the way along here, okay, then in the good years, in the boom years, we have a deficit, and this is called a structural deficit. And one way of measuring the structural deficit is what it would be is the deficit when you're at the trend rate of growth. Another way of looking at it might be what is it over the economic cycle. If you've got a structural deficit, it's a tricky situation. It can be solved by increasing the tax base, by taxing more things and people, such as more wealth, more income, more expenditure, or by reducing government expenditure, in certain areas. It depends on your politics, which you tend to go for to address the problem of a structural budget deficit. So the key point is that the automatic stabiliser will bring us closer to the trend rate of growth over the cycle automatically. And the OECD reckons this effect as about 20%, but it reduces the volatility in most rich countries. The automatic stabilisation effect is roughly about 20% effective in terms of reducing volatility. So, thank you for watching.